Let's talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot and my 5 favorite things. Actually, 4 of them are mine and 1 of them are Nicole's, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, we're going to talk about 5 different things that I find super useful because let's face it, it does a lot of things in a lot of pieces. And so I want to show you where I'm actually using it. So we're going to talk about Teams, Outlook, Excel, Forms, and the chatbot itself, and just kind of expose you to like some of the ways I'm actually using it today. Sound fun? Then let's just switch over to my desktop and take a look. All right, so first let's start with chat, right? So if you go to office.com/chat, there's like 12 different ways to get here, but I always go to office.com/chat. And so over here, this is kind of like their version of, the Bing Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever you might use. Here, sometimes you're like, well, what do I use this for? So the key thing to remember is that it has the full context of you inside your Microsoft 365 tenant. So to that end, what I find it doing the most for me is helping me find things. It can't find my keys still, but what it can find is content. So for example, this prompt right here, Daniel May shared something with me about AI in a day or Copilot in a day. Maybe it was a loop. I can't find it. Like I literally looked for 10 minutes for this thing before I was like, wait a minute, let me ask chat. So I threw it in here and said, hey chat, find this thing. And it did. It said, I found a loop titled Copilot in a day. It said what it was about. It also said, hey, I also found this a document, a Word document. So something I didn't even ask for, but it also was about a Copilot class outline. And so it was right. Like this was the loop I was, but this was good to know this was out here earlier. We apparently abandoned it since it was, months old, but yeah, what do you do? But if you look here also, so if you look at the one, if you hover, so if I click there, that would take me straight to the loop, which is what I wanted to do, right? Or if we go to here too, it would take me straight to the document. So this is a great way to play finders keepers. Like, hey, I can't find this thing that's going on out there. And remember, you can also use it for other things. So for example, yesterday, Daniel and I had a meeting where we taught our training students, office hours, right? And so maybe I want to get a recap of that. So we could go over to Teams and do all that, but I don't need the detailed recap that I'm going to teach you about in a second. What we want is just a quick one. So I'm going to do something like this. Please give me a recap of the last meeting that Daniel and I had. So this is an interesting one because sometimes, I know literal meeting it's going to pull now, but sometimes it's been a while since we've met. And so this can go back and it understands the context of, when was the last time we chatted? And then it's going to find that meeting. And then it's also then going to provide us a full rundown of it. And so look at that. After a few seconds, it's like, hey, here's the meeting. And that is correct. It was yesterday from 3 to 4. Here were some of the people who were in it. Daniel was an optional attendee, but he found he was in there. Also, it said, hey, there was this document that a bunch of you looked at, right? Because this is where we track all the questions you need to ask. And so it pulled it in. So anyway, I just want to point this out. Like, when you're thinking like, what do I use their chat for versus other tools? Sometimes it's around content things. Like creation, but for me, a lot of times it is my helpful hand because it just understands everything that's going on. So it can help me find, what's going on between me and Hunter, who's our intern, or me and Daniel, and the different things. And so this level of context is really helping me find things. Don't have my car keys, but find other things. Secondly, let's jump over to Teams, right? And this is actually my literal favorite one. And so I host lots of Teams things, right? So I teach all my online training classes in Teams. We have monthly office hours for the regular training students. We have a different one for AI students. So I have all of these different things I'm always hosting on Teams. And so we're recording and transcribing them. And one of the beauties of that is then I have the ability to use the recap feature in Teams, right? So you saw a moment ago, Copilot chat gave me a very brief recap. If we go here and we say, hey, recap, this is where you're going to see the full magic, right? This is available with the Microsoft 365 Copilot, or if you have Teams Premium. But so here we've got the recorded meeting. Down here at the bottom, you can see all of the different people that spoke during the meeting. And what's really nice about it, you can see the big blue bars. I talk a lot. I know, shocking. But you can see where different people talk. So if we want to figure out, like, what did Daniel chime in with here? If I click in here, this is going to take me to the point in the meeting where Daniel jumped in and started discussing, right? So you just hit play and it would start to chat. So a quick way to navigate your way back through the meeting. More interesting than that, though, over here on the right, we've got the meeting notes. So this is where it's taking all the transcribing and it's figuring out like what we talked about. So you can see, I talked about what are the purpose of it, some different updates. Daniel and I discussed the right one for the right task. And if I wanted to drill in there further, right, so I could drill into that one. And so then now this is like, hey, here's the sub bullets of that conversation. And then once again, I could be like, oh, what did we really say here? And so if I click in here, it not only, highlights this, but it jumps me to that spot in the meeting so I could rewatch the recording if I really wanted the full context. This is back to that whole thing like we used to worry about AI hallucinating. Well, if you're worried about that it's making up, that's what we talked about. it's taking you to the spot where it heard that, so you can go watch the recording there yourself and get the full context. This is a very powerful tool for us, right? So with your Microsoft 365 for Copilot, this little tip, I think this one helps with Teams. The other thing you can do, if we scroll down here at the bottom, we've got some follow-up tasks. So these are different things that it identified from the meeting that we would be helpful to, follow up on. So sometimes they're very direct, sometimes they're not. Now, I will tell you that one of the first things people ask me for with those is, hey, can we get those added like to do or something like that? That's not available today, but I would say that Microsoft has heard us all, and we're going to hope that one day we can press a button and say, yeah, add that to my to-do list. Now, if you're going through all this, you're like, oh, it's still not everything I want, because it wasn't all I wanted, right? So we can still click Copilot. And so now this will let me have a conversation about that meeting. And notice right away it presented something because it has the history. So I told you that I personally use this all the time for teaching. And so what I will often find myself doing here is saying, hey, what did I say I'd cover next time, right? Because I almost always end every session in a multi-session class and, like, hey, here's what we're going to discuss tomorrow or next week. Problem is that Shane doesn't always remember what he said. So what I will do now is I'll go in here and say, hey, what did I say I'd cover the next meeting? And it's given me the breakdown. And of course, I can always use the timestamps here to jump to that spot if I wanted to go listen and see what I said. But this has saved my bacon several times because instead of rewatching the video, I jump here and I'm like, oh, look, I said I would cover blah, blah, blah. And so I just pick right up with blah, blah, blah. So there you go. If you're not using this one, the Teams recaps, the ability to ask questions about it, go back, see what's going on. A lot of us go to a lot of meetings. This is my number one favorite tool. Now, if you're enjoying this practical breakdown of how I use Copilot, we've got a whole day of this coming up. I have a live Copilot Jumpstart class coming. It is May 7th, so just a couple weeks from now. Daniel and May and I will be going through everything that we want you to know to kind of get started, right? We're going to kind of start with the basics around, the Copilots, the bigger Copilot story, talk about a little bit the Bing Copilot. We're going to have some hands-on labs. We're going to get into the Microsoft Copilot. So there's 365 stuff we're doing now. We're going to talk about the Power Platform Copilot. We have another lab with that, also including AI Builder, and then kind of end it with here's some crazy ideas to kind of get your brain going. So if you're really trying to get into this Copilot stuff as quick as possible and you want to jumpstart, come join us for this live class on May 7th. All right, so this next one here, this one's actually Nicola's favorite feature, but she decided that she was worthy of getting her snuck in here. And so what hers is Excel, right? So as her role is leading her company, a lot of times she has to do a lot of weird stuff in Excel. And like me, she's not the world's greatest at Excel. Like we're both, marginal, fine, but we're not Excel rock stars. So one of the ways that she's been using Copilot with Excel is to get it to help her write formulas like she's a rock star that she is. Over here on the right, you can see we're doing things like this. So what does this formula do? And I couldn't come up with a formula that's too crazy, but one of the things I want you to understand is you can just feed it in a formula and it will explain it to you, right? We use this in Power Apps a lot as well. Like explain this formula to me. And so you can say, hey, round 100 by 3, and it tells me exactly what that formula would do and the final output. So if you have an Excel that you're editing that you have no idea how they did that, Copilot can just help you by telling you, hey, here's what this crazy formula can do. Also, what it can do is then I can update the logic. So here you can see that I'm like, hey, that's great, but really all I care about, I don't care about the final output. I want to know, if the number that it calculates greater than 50, I want, to say good. And if it's less than 50, I want it to say bad, right? So create me a conditional. And so here you can see that, look, if round that, right? So our same formula is greater than or equal to 50, then good, if not bad. And so if you know Excel, you're like, yeah, Shane, that's super easy. I get that. But a lot of us, really fake our way through Excel. And so the tool can really help because now there is the formula I needed. I can then, add that into my spreadsheet, start to work with it. Like we've covered all the cool ways you can add formula columns and stuff for you. So I don't want to cover that again, but I want you to see that having it help with formulas. And like Nicola literally did this earlier this week. We have one for computing, cost ranges on statements of work, so estimates we do. And so it stopped spitting out the right numbers. And so she went to open it because all the people that wrote the Excel were out of the office. And so she's like, I don't know what it did. And she gave it the big formula. It broke it down for her. And then she said, oh, now I see the logic problem. And then she asked Excel to fix it. Boom, just like that. This was literally what she did yesterday. That's how it made it into the video. So keep that in mind. Asking the different Copilot, especially with Excel, like, hey, here's my formula, help me out with it, is a great way to do it. Whereas we know, if you want to do that with Power Apps, my forte, we still have to kind of go outside the loop. So I use ChatGPT a lot for that. But for this particular stuff inside of Excel, this works great. All right, next up, Outlook. Okay, so if you know me well or you've watched enough of my videos, you've probably gotten the idea that I'm pretty straight to the point. So I may or may not have been fired from corporate America a couple of different times because I'm just very blunt in my responses, right? That's why I own my own company now. And it's not that I'm mean or I'm trying to be nasty. I just don't add all the niceties and all that. So it gets me in trouble when I try to be too direct. So one of the things I've been seeing is that Outlook coaching can help me, right? So for example, here's a fake email that we generated, but here it's got a bunch of different project updates, right? And so we know we can do summary by Copilot, tell me what's going on. We can reply like we've seen those demos before, or if you're in my AI classes, you have anyway. But one of the ways that I've been using this is not just to have it respond, but to help me respond better, right? So if I'm going to go here, I'm going to reply, and I'm not going to draft it with Copilot. I'm going to write my own response, right? So in this particular case, I'm angry about what's going on. And so I'm like, hey, I need a full update on the challenges with the doghouse project ASAP. We can't be behind again. Maybe we need to fire the contractor. Ugh, right? Like, this is the type of emails that Shane writes. So if we go up here to Copilot and we say coaching by Copilot, it's not going to rewrite the email for me. What it's going to do is it's going to analyze it and say, hey, here are some suggestions to make it better. These are kind of there to keep me out of trouble. All right, now I will warn you, it takes it a hot minute, right? That probably took 30, 45 seconds, right? But now you can see that's like, hey, you could be more respectful. So it's not going to change it for me. It's going to say, easy for me to say, instead of we can't get behind again, the email could say, we need to meet the deadline or let's work together to catch up, right? Same point, less Shane, right? A little calmer. Try adding more appreciation, right? So just opening with the old compliment sandwich, some type of nicety at the beginning. Once again, it doesn't kill me to do that. I would never naturally do it, but that would probably make the email be better received. And then it is also very vague, right? And which I can definitely appreciate that it was a little vague there. So coaching with Copilot is one of those things that's helping me to offend less people. How about that? By just reminding me to write a nicer email. I can tell you, this is an example because obviously can't show you the real ones I write, but I've sent, I send some mean emails sometimes, some very, very direct ones, and it's reeled me in. So just be cognizant that Copilot coaching would be a great way just to make sure, sanity check, am I being too direct, too mean, too informal, too vague, too whatever. So use that one more and hopefully, stay out of the doghouse like me. Last but not least is forms. So if you didn't know, Microsoft 365 Copilot added forms just a few weeks ago, right? So it is newer that this one has Copilot built in, but this one is very helpful. And a lot of people don't even realize they have forms, right? Forms is just a great way to create surveys. So if you ever use something like SurveyMonkey, forms is part of your M365 subscription. You've already paid for it, is here, and it works pretty well. So we use this a lot for our surveys. And even for our job applicants, if you've ever applied for a job, powerapps901.com, you go through a Microsoft form, okay? And it's because they're easy to create, and then you can have a flow trigger off of them. Then you take the data, you put it into your system, and you start to automate things. Anyway, that's not the point of this. The point of this is that one of the things we've done here, if I come in, and so last week I taught a 5-day training class on Power Apps and Power Automate live, yay. And so I now need to do a follow-up survey. And so one of the things I struggle with things like surveys is the blank screen, what questions should I even ask? So what I can do now is I can come in here in a new form. And so when you start a new form, you can immediately draft with Copilot. It's right in your face. So let's paste in kind of what I'm thinking. So I taught a Power Apps and Power Automate class last week, right? Always give AI context where you can. Please help me create a survey for the students. I'd like to ask them about, and I kind of ran through some of the different things I wanted to ask. And then I said, hey, also add other questions you think would help me better understand their experience. So I gave it some ideas of things I definitely wanted in there, plus reminded it to hey, I'm expecting you to fill in the blanks. So let's hit generate and look at that. Just like that, it has created me a 10-question survey. So, what did you like? What didn't you like? So these were kind of the ones I prompted in there. Speed, it chose the different systems. Also down here, you kind of start to say, look, these are the ones that it made up itself. Here, it made them separate rating questions. Last time I practiced this, it made it a Likert. So it actually was kind of all one question. Doesn't matter to me, right? But it's there. Oh, it even went with a net promoter score. That's pretty cool. It's the first time I've seen that. And at the bottom, it said, hey, is there anything you'd like to share about your experience in the class? So it did all the things. So that works, right? Now keep in mind, if you're not happy with what it spits out down here, we can refine this. So for example, maybe I want to ask a question about the recordings. So something like, hey, add a question about, did you find the values? Because I'm saying is like, hey, I want to keep what you got. I just want to add another one. So we'll say this. And so now it's going to take it, it'll take those 10 questions and it should just add an 11th question that is roughly the text that I gave it. Because I am spoon feeding it, but that's okay, right? You can be super vague, but in reality, you've got a decent idea. So if you just kind of give it your ideas and let it add the fluff around it, it's going to go better. There you go. And look, it even reordered them because it knew that the comment question should go at the end. So it put, the comment question at the end and it put this one up here at 10. Perfect, right? So now we say keep it. It will generate this for us. So boom, 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 boom. It will also then offer me a bunch of themes I can apply. And of course I want whatever this busy one is, right? Boom, we'll keep it. And so now we're off and running. So I've got the survey and I can just be done. Of course, I can go down here. I can manually still add questions, or I can continue to add questions with Copilot. So this is another one of those tools that I am using. It just showed up. It doesn't work with quizzes yet, but it does work on the survey side. And so if you've got to ask people for things, using the Copilot is a way better experience. Because even though everything it did here, I knew all the questions and stuff, like it created it faster. Like it was a faster process for me to let it do all the typing, the formatting, even if I just fed it the list of questions. So there you go. There are my 5 favorite things, ways I'm actually using Copilot today. It's very helpful, right? I am a big fan of the Microsoft 365 Copilot for Office and all those fun things. So we'll hopefully keep refining them. We're already seeing more and more of the tools starting to understand each other a little bit better. And of course, I'd love for you to come check out my class, or if you just need some help with this, right? We're doing consulting engagements now, helping people figure out how to add AI to their company so we can help you. Whatever I can do, just let us know. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.